Good evening, everyone. Today we have our Reading Marathon 2025 program starting from today's 17th January. So let me, I'm Shiroma Benragama, working as a Library and Information Services Manager, Sri Lanka. So we have some of our colleagues supporting this to have this session. So let me invite Neeti Saxena, who is our Senior Manager, Digital Library, to introduce Sita Brahmachari for the session.
Right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We know that our participants here are from across the globe. So welcome everyone on to this edition of the Reading Marathon. It's a pleasure having you, Sita, today. So, great privilege to introduce you today to our session. Sita Brahmachari is an internationally award-winning author known for her impactful children's and young adult novels and her work in theatre. Born in Derby in 1966 to the Indian and the English parents, her storytelling draws inspirations from her upbringing in the Lake District and her visit to Calcutta to meet her family. With an MA in arts, education, and extensive experience in community theatre, she has championed diverse voices through collaborations with major theatre companies like Tamasha and the Royal Shakespeare Company. Since her debut novel Artichoke Hearts in 2011, she has written numerous Carnegie nominated works. She has served as a human rights ambassador for Amnesty International and is currently working on across European projects exploring children's rights. Sita teaches creative writing and supports refugee communities through her writings. Welcome, Sita, to the program today. Over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Niti. And I can actually hardly believe that I'm sitting here talking to you about my joy of reading, my lifelong joy of reading, and eventually becoming a writer. And that you are global citizens who are about to go on this incredible journey of reading 4 books, and who knows where that journey will take you. I'm going to take you a little bit back to when I was a child, because I'm very interested in the experience of childhood in my stories. When I wrote my first novel that Niti mentioned, Artichoke Hearts, I was almost 40 years old. In fact, I was 40 years old when it was published. And all my life, since a very small child, I had dreamt of becoming a writer. And in fact, I was quite late to learn to read as a child, but I had some amazing advantages as a child. I had an incredible landscape of the Lake District where I grew up, where my mum came from, a working class farming family in the Lake District. And I had the stories, the oral history stories of my father, Dr. Amal Krishna Brahmachari, who came to Britain in 1959 to be a doctor in the National Health Service. And I have a picture of him here rendered by a wonderful illustrator that I work with called Jane Ray. And he used to tell a very shy little girl who was very worried about a sense of belonging. Where do I belong, in the Lake District or in India? Where am I? When I went to school, I wasn't finding the books that would in any way tell stories which were about my global diaspora identity, which I loved. And I felt I was always imagining what my cousins were doing in Calcutta as a child. And I was always interested in global diaspora connections through, in fact, the marriage of my parents. But my dad was an amazing storyteller, and I think he realized that it was so important for his children to have a connection to both sides of their heritage, to understand the histories, the colonial legacies, and also the losses that come from leaving one country and going to another country. So from very, very early childhood, he started telling us stories about when he first arrived in Britain. And these stories really sort of got under my skin, and I started to write them down in my journals. And I've got here an example of one of my journals. And I know you're about to go on a reading journey, but for me, the experience of reading and writing is so intricately connected, because I think many stories are about how the individuals within the stories find a voice. And I write rites of passage stories. So very early on, I began writing down my stories. This is a notebook that I had since I was a teenager. And there is like my characters, I'm a doodler and a daydreamer, and I'm very interested in the power of the arts to help us find a way to navigate through our lives. And this was a little sketch that I drew as a teenager, which was about the really dreadful, hideous speech, which of course we still live with the legacy of, by Enoch Powell, which was called the Rivers of Blood speech, which you may think, you know, is a very, very adult thing for a child to have taken in. But one of the things that I find so interesting as a writer is the way in which we deny the state of childhood as a kind of a different land, as if the child in us has somehow disappeared when we're an adult. So that's what I write about. So this Rivers of Blood speech, as a child, I started thinking, well, my mum and my dad loved each other, even though there were so many cultural differences, religious differences. Often, you know, when we would be, you know, having discussions around the table, you know, they would be really sort of exploring, you know, their agreements, disagreements. And I heard that as a child. And I was thinking about this Rivers of Blood for a long, long time. And I was thinking about how to transform it into the Rivers of Love. In a way, there's an American author called Willa Cather, and she says that most of the basic materials an author uses are gathered before the age of 15. I really feel that all of the storytelling that I have done since in theatre and in novels have really been about answering those early questions that I had as a child about identity, about history, about whose stories are told and whose stories are not heard. And I really got that through the sensibility of my father, although he didn't burden us with the difficulties that he faced when he first came to Britain. The child will understand, they will kind of feel the undercurrents. I remember one day sitting on, standing on a rock in the Orkneys. We went on holiday to the Orkneys, and it has become one of my stories, Corey's Rock. I was standing on a rock with my dad, and he was looking out to sea, and there was a seal rising from the water. And he looked out to sea and he said, "Do you know, Sita, when I was, you know, when I look at the sea, I always think of home." And little girl Sita, who grew up in Britain, was born in Britain, in Derby, and then Lake District family and all of that, was like, "But aren't we home to you? As children, home to you in this country?" I didn't ask that question, but that question was kind of in the undertow of my storytelling heart. And my dad said, "You know, I will always feel suspended between worlds." I'm telling you these stories as part of my own patchwork storytelling journey to see that when you open a book, we meet so much, don't we? We meet the longings of people and from childhood. We meet the questions that we've wanted to ask. We meet the anger that people feel about what's not fair and what's not just in the world. And really, all my work after I graduated at English Literature at university, all my work has really been exploring this idea of outsider and insider being suspended between worlds, often from the point of view of of children. And so the books that I read when I was a child, they were things like this, which were charming. They were poetry and, you know, flower fairies of the spring. But none of the children in the stories that I read when I was a child really felt that they encompassed this expansive diaspora family that I had. And so when I first went to Calcutta and met my cousins, I saw my cousin dancing on the Maidan, and I have in my storytelling quilt these wonderful memories that I place into my stories. And it suddenly opened up my world, because there was this girl from, you know, the cold climate of the Lake District and the mountains, finding this family that she had in Calcutta and a new culture and a new history that she felt totally enveloped by. For me, that was very connected to the story of the possibilities of reading, because we can't in any way, you know, and wouldn't we want to environmentally travel the world and sort of, you know, go everywhere and find, but in a book, I have found that you can open up a world and suddenly step into the shoes of another person and start to feel that you are, you know, moving through their worlds. So I go back to what I said at the beginning. I cannot believe that some of my stories are maybe some of the stories that you might read in the reading marathon. In my books, for example, Kite Spirit, which is one of the stories that's on your list, I'm able to marry this identity of some of these children in the Lake District and also their connections to India, as the Dr. Sherpa, the Indian doctor, is there in the mountains with these children. My father wanted desperately to have a practice in the Lake District when he was younger, but because of racism, he was not able to do that. And so what we can do in stories, what we can do as writers and readers, is we can cross borders in the way that we might not be able to do in reality. And I have just so enjoyed doing that again and again and again in my storytelling. One of the things as a child that I was very interested in, and I'm still interested in, the palette of my storytelling that traces. Here is the palette of my storytelling. This palette belonged to Nana Josie in my first novel, Artichoke Hearts, and all the paintings of her life she did on this palette from the age of 3 till just before she died, when she painted a picture of me with my baby, who is now 18. So this palette of storytelling is something that I think about a lot. You know, what inspires us, what influences, how does a voice develop, how through all of the difficult things that people face, and also the joyful things that people face. And what we can do when we create art, when we write stories, is we can create transformations within the worlds of characters. And it can be an extremely uplifting experience. One of the things that I write about a lot is well-being and mental health, and the power of reading and the arts to find a place that maybe we can't always find in reality. So in Where the River Runs Gold, the childhood idea that I had about why can't we look after the environment? Why do we humans, why are we so arrogant that we think that we can live on this planet, sort of as if we're more important than the animal world and the insect world and the natural world? And so years and years later, as an adult, in my mid-40s, I write Where the River Runs Gold, but I can trace those thoughts back right to my childhood self. So I thought I'd like to read you, now I've told you a few of my pieces, I thought I'd like to read you a little bit from Where the River Runs Gold, which is set in a near future world, which is extremely, it has extreme inequality. The world is divided into 3 groups of people: paragons, who are the resourced people, who are a small percentage of the people, who are not paragons of virtue; freedoms, which is the majority of people who somehow feel compromised, but they have to buy into certain systems that are provided to them, like healthcare and education. But the deal is that they must send their children away to pollinate crops, because in the world that I've imagined, the bees seem to have disappeared. And the third group of people are outlanders. Where did I get these ideas from? I go back to the stories that my father told me all those years ago as a child. You'll recognize a little bit of the leap of the imagination in this storytelling. Desperately needing to hide away from too much reality, Shifa crawled through the tails of Baba Suli's frayed old coat that guarded the entrance to the story hive. She bent down, carefully pulling apart the frayed wine-red lining of the side vents. Every time she passed through the coat flaps, she thought of her Baba as a baby wrapped snug inside, when at the end of his long journey across mountains, deserts, and sea, Baba Suli had finally made it to the Kairos lands. An old man and a tiny baby, with all the rest of his family devastated by war. Mothers, brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, all died, except not lost, not extinguished. Her papa insisted, because he refused to let their stories die with them. Shifa loved it most when Nabil spoke in Baba Suli's voice, as if he was summoning him into the room. Once There was a golden city in a golden time, where the trees stood tall and where the wildflower fields bloomed, where the honey was aplenty, a time of sweetness and simple kindnesses, where skeps were given as wedding presents for newlyweds to start new lives together. One such skep was gifted to me and my wife Shifa long ago in our beloved kingdoms of Skyranum. It probably feels like a fairy tale to you, but it was a long and arduous journey we made with my grandson Nabil over deserts and oceans. Fascinated, Shifa gently opened the coat flaps and eased away the towers of empty crates stacked behind. The ones above her head were immovable and formed a heavy rooftop of recycled finds, random pieces of wood, string, old glass bottles waiting for Nabil to make into one of his garden sculptures. Now collector's items among the paragons. Hard to believe that once upon a time there had been enough room for all of them to crawl inside this tiny hexagonal cocoon that Temba had named their story hive. So writing for me and the process of opening a book and reading a book and finding new worlds to explore, new people to empathize with, characters who I may not empathize with at the beginning of the story, but by the end, I have understood what and how that character has been formed. For me, it's been such a precious journey, and every time that I open a new book, I know that it's expanding my world. So linking back to the child that was asking all of these big questions, really my own history and my own identity, my wanting to engage with the diaspora stories of my father, what it was like for him in different times of his life, then my cousins, meeting my cousins, one of whom I'm going to meet today, this evening, who's traveling to London. This expansive idea of opening up your world came to me very, very early on. And the very first book that I read that made me understand that there were stories written by the kind of people I hadn't seen in my younger years in the books in the library. There were stories that also held some of these ingredients. And the first one that I read was this one, Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And when I opened the pages of this book as a teenager, it literally changed my life. I still viscerally, now I'm talking to you, remember the emotions that rose up in me of outrage that the inequality in America and such recent history had caused this woman to live the life that she had, just because she was a Black woman. And of course, from there, as happens in storytelling, as a young reader, I started to research, the history of slavery within America. And then I started to research the history of slavery in Britain and the connections with, say, northern factories and those sort of things, the connections between my father coming to Britain and colonialism. All of these things started to open up in me like a map. And I started to reach for the books. I remember reading Anita Desai, Diamond Dust, and absolutely loving that and feeling that that's really such a strong connection to that. And then I remember thinking, oh my goodness, these people who are writing these books in diary form, as Maya Angelou did with I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, they're real people and they're ordinary people and they're people who really should find their voices in stories, and people that I would have absolutely eaten up if I'd have found those books when I was a child. And that is why when I had my children, I started to read these books, write these books that really centered the kind of diverse families that I live with in London and have worked with as an educationalist, the children who are arriving as refugee children every day in this country and all over the world, the displaced children of the world. And I think for me as a writer, when I read a book, I'm always looking for the heart I'm always looking to be moved, either to laugh out loud or to be moved to tears. I am looking to feel that in the undertow of this storytelling is something really deeply rooted. So I'm going to show you the artichoke charm. And the artichoke charm, which I am wearing, was a fictional idea. It was dreamed up at my desk which was the charm that the grandmother gives her grandchildren when she's passing in Artichoke Hearts. And she gives them the charm and she says, Mira, most people as they get older, they grow tough little layers around their hearts because of the difficult things that happen to them. And sometimes those are necessary because they help you get through the day, working with refugee families and people coming to London. You see that you have to survive. It's hard. But Nana Josie says, but Mira, never close your heart to the people around you. Always have a warm and open, trusting heart. The only part of the artichoke that is worth eating is at the heart. And as a writer and as a reader, I feel like that's the process for me. It's kind of pulling apart the layers of characters and worlds and stories to get to something which is very, very precious, an opportunity to connect with people, with worlds, in a way that we might not get to do within a lifetime. To change your mind sometimes, we live in such a binary place where people are at war with each other within a few characters on social media. But when you read a book, you have that space around you to really connect with it personally and to consider, how it connects deeply with your life. Books really have changed my life. They've changed the direction of my life from reading Maya Angelou as a teenager, leaving university, wanting to work in community theatre, wanting to work with diverse communities within Britain who might have experienced some of the experiences that my father experienced when he first came, and us, ourselves as mixed heritage children in Britain, some of the more painful experiences. And I wanted to work with a wide diaspora community of people bringing their cultures, their storytelling, their history. And I have found that I have been able to place some of those characters in my stories and center their stories. Very recently, I wrote a novel called When Secrets Set Sail, and it's set in a house in London, which is in Hackney, which is the house of Ayers, the Ayers who came to look after the children of the British. And they would bring them back on the long ship journeys. And sometimes in Britain, they would find that they were abandoned on the streets because their passage was not paid back home. So this house in Hackney is still there, and it's received a blue plaque recently due to the campaigning of many amazing campaigners. And so you can walk past this house and see the Ayers remembered, their history remembered. But as a child, I have been thinking about, since childhood, I was thinking about the hidden places, the absences that are in storytelling. And so I started to write this book in which the children who live in the house are hearing the voices of the Indian, Bangladeshi, Pakistani nursemaids from the Victorian times. And they are hearing them through the ear of a conch shell, which connects to my dad's long journey from India to Britain, that's suspended between worlds. So I'm going to end by just showing you a little bit of what happens in that story. So Imtiaz has just moved into the house and she lives there with Usha. Usha's family have been in the house for a long time. Usha's grandfather was a doctor coming from India to be a doctor to working class people in the East End of London in that house a long time ago. There are many ghosts in the house, but one of the ghosts that is unexplored is the ghost of the Ayah, who had no place, the working class woman who had no place in stories. Imtiaz, who needs an Ayah, she needs a nursemaid, she picks up this conch shell and she listens. And very, very faintly in the distance, she hears the voice of a woman. And the woman is saying to her, "Piece my story together, or my history's lost forever." And so the children have to go on a treasure hunt to find the different pieces of this woman's history that have been left in the places that she was, in the houses that she went to, along the streets that she lived homeless because she was abandoned on the streets, and they discover her history. I think for me, part of my storytelling and the patchwork quilt of my storytelling has always been about piecing our family together and writing the many absent histories into the landscape. I hope that that speaks to you, that when you open a book, you know, you think, wow, this is going to take me on a journey into unexplored places. I'm going to end by reading you a little bit from the Dear Reader of When Shadows Fall, which is my latest novel. I think you'll see from what I've said how this connects all the pieces. It stitches together all the pieces. And it speaks to you. Dear Reader, this is a story long in the telling, planted into childhood, finding form and wings in words. When shadows fall, you stand beside. So says Omid. His message I too stand by. This is a story that has your back. It stands by you who walk this tender earth, seeking light. This is a story tree of survival, with world-wandering roots, a strong trunk, wide-reaching, sustaining branches for all to shelter under, in family, friendship, community, love. This story is in your hands, to have and to hold. In it you will find the passing of a pen and charcoal to make art from scorched earth. Take it up and feel its force, for now is your turn to fly. Thank you very much. Songbirds. We're all songbirds crossing borders. This is a card from Hervé at the refugee centre that I worked with in London. He painted this before Christmas. He was a man that had not painted. He was from the Congo. He is from the Congo. Sometimes in real life, as well as in fiction, magical things do happen. He painted these songbirds and wished that he would get asylum in Britain. And we sat together at the table and we wrote this poem. New Year songbirds. We are a global flock, flying free into dreams in solidarity. Songbirds, sing out the old year and in with the new. We bring all our colours, flying free to new possibilities, making wishes. Every time I open a book, I think about the new possibilities, and I hope the stories that you read bring you many, many new possibilities. Maybe they'll even change your life. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sita. There are a few questions from the audience, and also they have appreciated your work, saying very inspirational and it's lovely. So many comments are there, wonderful. It's a wonderful session. So there is something from a participant, reading a book, opening up a new dimension, opening oneself to new perspectives, and build a connection with the story characters. What is your suggestion to today's generation that wants instant gratification and prefers content consumption in the form of videos or audio instead of a text?
So it's a fantastic question, and of course it's the big question that we all ask as writers, you know, especially it takes a long time to write these books. So you're sort of sitting at your desk thinking, oh, who's going to read them? But I found that often in my storytelling, I center the characters who are disenfranchised. For example, in When Shadows Fall, Kai King would not be a reader at school. And in fact, he is excluded from school through actually no fault of his own. But he is a child that may have been more on kind of videos or games or social media and not found a book. But in fact, I find that because I teach a lot of creative writing, I find that as soon as you get young people to realize, like I did with my father, that they are surrounded by story, that their families, the people in their community, their friends, their voices are storytelling voices, which kind of goes back to my work in theatre. As soon as they realize that and they start saying, I can do that, and they have agency and they have power and they start to write in a way through their own voices, then they're interested in reaching out to other voices in story and finding them. So When Shadows Fall is a very deep book, but it's written when I wrote the words of the book in quite a poetic way, but also in a way that wasn't going to shut out children that found it difficult to read. It's written almost like in diary form or journal form. I'm told that many of the children that don't read have found that book and really, have started reading as a consequence. When I go into schools, often I will ask who hasn't found the book that has made them want to read. When your guardians or parents say to you, switch off the light, it's time to stop reading. Who hasn't found that book? And loads of children will put their hand up. And I say, I'm so jealous of you, because as soon as you find that book, wow, a whole world is going to open up to you. And it's just about finding that one book. And I'm very proud that, When Shadows Fall is considered to be one of those books that can really get those children or young adults, teenagers who don't necessarily think of themselves as readers or writers to pick up the pen. And that's that poem I was writing to the reader, really, to say, it's in your hands. You can write your story. So I think it's all about, links to my work at Amnesty and with refugee people. It's about empowering young people to see that their stories should be centered. So many young people, I think, feel like they are outside of the world of books because still they don't find themselves there.
Yes. Thanks, Sita. There's a comment saying one element I notice is that all the books you mentioned that moved you are fiction books. There seems to be a trend recently of non-fiction books, but to me, like fictional stories have shaped me so much more and opened my mind to other journeys rather than something like a chicken soup. Yeah. Uh, so I have another question. Is it difficult to write what you want as opposed to what you know people would like to read, Sita?
So just to comment on both of those things about non-fiction and fiction. I mean, I think, for me, because my storytelling inspirations also do come from, the landscapes of our palette are the times through which we are living now. Whoever writes in whatever time, they will, as part of their palette, bring the realities of their times to their work. And I think, you will find many of the realities of our world, not in documentary form, but sort of in character form, in which the stories that I'm writing is trying to kind of find another way with the real world. Like the real world can be too much, like it was for Shifa in Where the River Runs Gold. So I'm quite interested as a fiction writer in the intersection between reality and fiction. But for me, the transformations, the magic realism, the Isabel Allende type, this kind of almost metaphysical, spiritual aspect of it. That Kai King, yes, he's excluded from school, but he has these magical ravens with him. That in fiction is really, really important to me. And of course, now, because I've done storytelling around that, I've forgotten the second part of the question. So, Niti, you're going to have to remind me.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sita. And your stories are full of imagination. Books bring your imagination to life. Books make your imagination into reality. There are times that we feel that our characters are in those stories as well. So thank you so much for joining this session, and we look forward to hearing from you once again.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks. Now, let me introduce Maria Rehman, Deputy Director, Pakistan, to welcome the audience and officially launch the Reading Marathon program.
Thank you
Maria.
so much. Hello, thank you so much. And Sita, thank you so much for an engaging session. Fascinating. You actually got me thinking about what I want to say today as I have the honor of launching the reading marathon. Let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Maria Rahman, and I am the Deputy Country Director in Pakistan. And I am absolutely so privileged and so honored to be given the opportunity to launch this program because I feel I must be in the presence of some very like-minded and fellow passionate readers from around the world. And that's particularly meaningful to me because I speak to you as a child who spent a lot of time reading under the bed covers with a little flashlight, and sometimes during flashlight emergencies with the lamplight outside of the bedroom window to finish my books. I was a big dreamer, and part of the reason I dreamt big was because I loved reading, and reading was such a big part of my childhood. So I always dreamt of writing my own novel, but I ended up here as a deputy director. But it's the second possible, best possible career I could have had because actually my career started in libraries, and I'm really proud of that. I left university and I started to work for libraries in the UK, and I got to, like I say, do the second best thing because I got to share my love of reading and my passion for reading and my genuine belief that books can change lives with people around the library network in the UK. And then I was privileged indeed to be able to work for the British Council in opening 2 libraries in Pakistan as well. So I really do feel in some ways I've honored the Maria who grew up and whose life was shaped by the availability of books and libraries when I was growing up. So once again, I can only stress that it's an absolute delight for me to be here on a personal level to launch the reading marathon. And it's wonderful that we've already got over 2,500 join us for the marathon from around the world. I also think this is really special for the British Council because, as many of you might know, and some of you might not know, we recently celebrated our 90th anniversary. The British Council is just over 90 years old now. And the British Council, we opened our first centers and they were libraries. We like to say that we're an organization who, we work on the principle that friendship, friendly knowledge, mutuality, trust and understanding build a better world. And we thought that world would be improved by the presence of libraries. And we continue to believe that. Times might have changed. The number of physical libraries we have may have reduced in number, but actually our global digital library membership has grown, and the potential for digital to be able to access more and more readers from around the world, readers who can access their library from their screen, from their laptop, from anywhere around the world is immense. And we're really proud of the steps that we've taken to increase access and inclusion to the British Council Library offer. So just to say, on a personal note, on a professional note, I'm really delighted to be able to launch this product. The reading marathon, to all of you who took the time out today to join the launch ceremony. I'll just recap quickly what we're hoping to do with the reading marathon. As probably you will all know because you took the time to join the marathon and to subscribe to it. It's a 2-month online reading program where library members from around the world read at least 4 books to earn a certificate. So far, we've got over 2,000 participants, and we're being represented from readers all over the world. And again, the reason I think this is so powerful is because we are a global organization and we're in the business of trust, friendship, and international collaboration. And I really do believe that through books and through reading, the data supports it. We build friendly knowledge and we build empathy and we create more resilient human beings. And a final note, I'll just add that as we spend so much of our times, especially post-COVID, connected to our screens, looking at our own image on meetings digitally, it's vitally important that we take some time away from social media, from scrolling, from what we now know increasingly as the increasing risks to our mental health through spending too much time on social media. And we use things like books, and we use them to improve our empathy actually ever so slowly our own mental health and resilience as well. And I hope that as we read, we also promote the love of reading to the younger generation as well, who will benefit from that time you spend with them, with the book, with reading, with any kind of reading, whether it's graphic novels or history books or adventure or sci-fi or fantasy. It can open up so many worlds for them. So I feel like I've gone on a bit of an anecdotal journey with you, but it is without doubt one of the best things that I've done all month, launching the reading marathon. And I really hope you enjoy the community that you develop amongst yourselves as you go and start your reading through the marathon. I'll add also that I join a reading group in Islamabad, where I'm based. And for 1 hour every month, me and a number of different people will sit together and read in silence together for an hour. And it's one of the best hours of my week. It's not particularly glamorous, but it really does center and ground me. And I hope that through this, you will also find enjoyment and peace and community and networks and friendships that will continue to exist long after the marathon itself. That is all from me. If I hand over now to the organizers, and please forgive me if I've missed a vital piece of information that I ought to have shared. You can let me know.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you. Let me introduce Tuba to do a short presentation.
Hi everyone. Yes, thank you so much, Roma. Hi everyone. It was very inspirational hearing what Sita and Maria had to share. Thank you so much for your input. Now I'm going to share the presentation on how to access our digital library, and I'll be sharing my screen. So if you could tell me when it's visible, I'll start.
We can see the screen.
Perfect. All right. So welcome to the reading marathon, everyone. So how to access the digital library? The contents of this presentation are we're going to see how you can access the digital library, from where to access the curated collection for this reading marathon, how you're supposed to borrow books from the digital library, and information on the digital library application. So first of all, when you click on this link that you can see over here, app.myloft.xyz, you will be redirected to this page. Salisha, if you could please share the link to the website, that would be great, in the chat box. You will select your country, wherever you're from. You'll insert your initials, your credentials, your password, and your username, and then click on login. You'll be redirected to this screen. And once you're redirected to this screen, please select this option over here, this fiction option, and then you will get to access the curated collection for the reading marathon. You're supposed to select and borrow books, or you could read the sample, or you can put the books on hold, which are not available. All right. So from here, when you search for the books, you will see this button over here, this little blue card over here. From here, you can borrow, read the sample, or tag the book. And once you click over here, you'll be redirected to this page, which again shows you this button which has written borrow on it, and you can borrow one book for 14 days. And so basically, you can borrow a total of 3 books at one point in time. You can borrow a total of 3 books. And to be able to get a certificate for participating in this challenge, you will need to read a minimum of 4 books. Okay, so from this little icon over here, where there are 2 books stacked together, you can access your shelf and you can see all the books that you've loaned over here. You can return your book early. You can return it after you've read it. You can return it early, or you can renew your loan if you're still reading it. Now, British Council Digital Library, install MyLoft. You can also install your application on your mobile phone. You can use it via browser or via your mobile phone. And lastly, if you have any queries about the digital library, you can write them to this email address, digitallibrary@britishcouncil.org.pk, and Salisha will also be sharing that in the chat box. That's all from my end. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tuba. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining with us today. There are so many participants who have joined this program, and it was an inspiring and it was like full of imagination. I would like to thank Maria Rehman, Deputy Director Pakistan, for launching the Reading Marathon 2025 and also sharing her experiences and good practices. Thanks so much to our colleagues at the British Council for their support in making this event a success. Special thanks to Sita Brahmachari, and thank you very much for your valuable time spent with us, and we are looking forward to meet you once again. On behalf of the British Council, we would like to thank all the participants who joined the session today, and we would like to invite you to our upcoming global programs in the coming weeks, as well as we wish you all the best for your reading marathon and enjoy reading. Have a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.